You will always be a parasite living off your mother in your parents' house. As the eldest son, I will take over the management of the company. Get your things together and get out of here. You, living off your parents at your age, I can't believe it. Live a more independent life. After my father passed away, my brother and his wife yelled at me. Furthermore, my brother's wife threw water on me from a cup and laughed loudly. Although they don't know, how dare they treat me this way? The designated successor of the company, even before my father's funeral has ended. I can't take it anymore. There is no reason for me to be insulted so unreasonably. I will not let this go. I have vowed to sever ties with these two and retaliate against them by any means necessary. My name is Brenda. I am a 35-year-old company employee living at home. While supporting my mother who overcame a serious illness, I lead a busy life. I had a faint hope of getting married by 28 and having children by 30. But now that I have missed my chance to marry, I have decided never to marry and have become a strong woman living alone. What I look forward to is enjoying a parfait with my mother at a new cafe nearby on the weekends. Mom, shall we go to the cafe this weekend? I heard from the neighbors that they have a new strawberry parfait. Don't you want to try it? That sounds delicious. Let's go. I'm looking forward to it. It seems that my mother also enjoys going out with me. Weekdays are so busy that there is no time to rest, but having something to look forward to is what keeps me going. Then it's decided. We have to do our best until Saturday. And Mom, don't overdo it. My mother underwent heart surgery 3 years ago. At one point, we even prepared for a sad farewell due to a life expectancy announcement, but she has recovered at an astonishing rate and is still with us today. She goes to the hospital every 2 weeks for regular checkups and treatments, and although she takes a lot of medication daily, she's been able to live healthily by making exercise a habit. Brenda, thank you so much. Because of you, I've been able to stay healthy. I thought it was all over at that time, but I'm really glad I worked hard on the treatment. She usually has to restrict her diet, but once a month, the doctor allows her to enjoy whatever she likes. My mother looks forward to using this opportunity for outings with me. You might think it's odd for a 35-year-old still living at home to enjoy outings with her mother, but I am very happy now, and it's precious time for me. My father isn't very talkative, but he always seems to enjoy listening to our conversations. The exchanges between you and Brenda are like a comedy sketch. It's entertaining to listen to. We're just enjoying some girl talk. Why would it be a comedy sketch? My father runs a company and works hard, so he returns home exhausted every day. His routine is to relax on the living room sofa watching TV after having a beer and a little snack. Currently, he delegates some of the work to employees, and it seems he doesn't have as much physical strain as before, but he used to handle everything by himself. I am proud of my father who works hard for our family every day. However, recently he has been having some days when he's not feeling well, and it wouldn't be surprising if he named a successor due to his age, but for some reason he is reluctant to do so. Hey Dad, don't you plan to let Philip take over the company? You seem pretty exhausted, don't you? I have an older brother, Philip, who is 2 years older than me. I've always thought it would be better for my father to hand over the company to someone else. I will never let Philip take over. I'd rather hand it over to someone else than give it to him. Okay, I understand. Originally, my father and my brother did not get along well, and they have been clashing frequently since my brother became an adult. It seems that their relationship has not improved even now. If I let him manage the company, it would be ruined within a month. He doesn't just lack business knowledge, he's also too reckless with money. I can't entrust the company to someone like that, my father said angrily. I had wondered what had happened between them, but when I asked my mother, she mentioned that my brother Philip had some financial troubles during his college years. At that time, the financial situation was tough until the company took off, so I chose to attend a less expensive public high school to support our family. However, Philip attended a costly private school and spent his time playing without working part-time. Even after Philip became an adult, my father asked him several times to help with the company. Why should I help out with such a failing company? You started it because you liked it, so deal with it yourself, he refused. Moreover, Philip repeatedly used the company's money for his nightlife, eventually becoming uncontrollable. It seems my parents didn't want to show me their struggles and had kept quiet about my brother's issues for a long time. I wonder why Philip became so selfish. We raised both the same way, and we didn't spoil him in particular, my mother said sadly. Indeed, Philip was always full of complaints and sarcasm, and had a narrow-minded personality. This year, Philip turned 37 and is set to marry his girlfriend, who is 7 years younger than him, after a long relationship. Just a week ago, I received a call from him saying he would come to greet us. However, he called me instead of our parents. Next week, I'm bringing my girlfriend over. It's a visit with the intention of marriage, so I can't invite her to a messy house, right? So make sure to tell Dad and Mom to prepare for hosting us and tidy up, he said. Why are you telling me this? Why don't you talk to them directly? I didn't quite understand Philip's motive, and his way of speaking was as unpleasant as ever. It didn't sit right with me to relay this, but to avoid a sudden visit without our parents knowing, I decided to tell them the same day. Philip is getting married. He said he's coming next weekend with her for the greetings, so we should clean the rooms and prepare to host them. He should have said it himself instead of asking me. His character hasn't changed a bit, I told them. My parents sighed heavily and were silent for a while. However, my parents hoped that if the marriage went well, he might visit less frequently and spend less money. Let's make sure to handle this greeting properly, as if it were the last, my father said with determination. Then, the weekend arrived and my brother Philip brought his fiancée to our family home. It's been a while. Sorry I couldn't get in touch sooner. I think Brenda told you, but I'm getting married to my girlfriend. Nice to meet you. I'm Holly. Please remember me. Is this a greeting to someone she's meeting for the first time? Is she sane? Is she mocking us? Following my brother, his fiancée Holly introduced herself in a miniskirt and heavy makeup, greeting us with a smug attitude and a smirk. The situation was hardly appropriate for a marriage introduction, and while our family was stunned, Philip seemed completely unconcerned about her, making them a matching pair in a way. Amid the tense atmosphere, my mother tried to lighten the mood by asking Holly, "Do you work somewhere?" which only made Holly angry. Huh? Work? I'm not working right now, but is there a problem? I aim to be a housewife, and I have no intention of working after marriage, so I won't be helping out at your company. Despite no one in the family having mentioned my father's company, she provocatively threw that out. Her words clearly angered my parents and me, but we decided not to stoop to their level and silently endured the situation. After they left, we discussed our feelings thoroughly. What on earth was that fiancé thinking? She spoke as if she was looking down on my company. What does he see in such a rude and presumptuous woman? It's really terrible. Are all people these days like that? I'd rather not deal with her if possible. Of course not, Mom. Don't lump us together with her. That evening, the topic of my brother and his fiancée dominated our dinner conversation, and the three of us agreed to keep our distance from Philip and his future wife as much as possible. Later, Philip contacted us again. It seems that things are progressing smoothly towards the marriage, but they plan to register the marriage first and decide on the wedding ceremony later. Make sure to tell Dad and Mom to prepare a wedding gift early. You're a working adult, so I'm counting on you, my brother said, even pressing me for a wedding gift. To avoid any complaints later, I wrapped a gift amount larger than the usual rate and handed it directly to Philip. Later, I received a thank you call from his wife, Holly, but it was clear she was eating during the conversation. Thank you for the gift. I thought your father's company was about to go out of business, so I'm lucky to have received this gift money, she said. What do you mean by going out of business? My father's company has about 30 employees and is operating without any problems, I retorted, but Holly just laughed mockingly. Unsatisfied with her response, I hurriedly ended the call. Her disrespectful remarks, as if insulting my father, made me very sad. A month later, an unexpected event occurred in our family. I had taken a day off to accompany my mother to the hospital, but our rarely used home phone rang that morning. We were even considering canceling the landline service since we hardly used it anymore, so the sudden ring startled me. Hello, I answered, and it was an employee from my father's company on the line. The voice was very disturbed and trembling. Something terrible has happened. The president suddenly clutched his chest and collapsed. We've called an ambulance, and he's being transported to the hospital now. Could the family please head to the hospital we're about to tell you? My mother, who was preparing for her regular checkup, noticed me pale with the receiver in hand and immediately grasped the situation. Brenda, what happened? Is everything okay? Dad collapsed and has been taken to the hospital by ambulance. We need to hurry, Mom. We decided to take a taxi to the hospital we were directed to. On the way to the hospital, we were overwhelmed by anxiety but continued to pray for my father's safety. Upon arriving at the hospital and rushing to the reception, we mentioned my father's name and were immediately directed to the emergency department. Soon, a stern-faced nurse arrived and said, "Please come this way to the room." She led us to the hospital room. With trembling hands, I opened the door, and there lay my father, who had already passed away. As my mother and I stood in stunned silence, the doctor explained the situation at the time of transport. When the ambulance arrived, he was in cardiac arrest. We tried resuscitation to the best of our abilities, but he never regained consciousness, and unfortunately, this was the result. I'm very sorry. My father had suffered an acute myocardial infarction, and nothing more could have been done. The suddenness of it all made it difficult for us to accept reality, but seeing my father's peaceful face, I remembered how he had worked tirelessly for us every day, and it felt like he might finally be able to rest, which brought me a slight sense of relief. I had informed my brother about the situation on our way to the hospital. I'm at work and can't just leave like you can. It's probably nothing serious, so don't make such a big deal out of it, he responded coldly before abruptly hanging up. Even after I informed him of our father's death, his insensitive reply came, "I see." Well, that was just his time, I guess. It's better than him becoming an old burden. It was hard to believe he was part of the same family. I felt a deep contempt for my brother. While my mother and I were engulfed in sorrow, time did not stop for us, and we had to proceed with the funeral preparations. During this time, the thought of my father's company suddenly crossed my mind. What will happen to the company? There are employees depending on it, I murmured. Then, my mother pulled out a notebook. "This is a manual for managing the business that your father had been working on for a long time. If you're willing, Brenda, he wanted you to take over the company. What do you think?" The thick notebook she handed me was packed with information and know-how my father had gathered to develop the company. His presence was immense, and the hole in my heart would not be filled. However, once the funeral was over, I would have to face reality. "I'll do it, Mom. I'll try my best." There was no reason for me to refuse. Deep down, I had always felt that someday I might need to take over my father's business. In this state, the funeral was scheduled for the following day. At the funeral, my brother and his wife made an unbelievable statement. "Hey, Brenda, how long do you plan to mooch off our parents and live at home?" "What do you mean by that?" I couldn't understand why they would bring this up at such a time, or why it was necessary to discuss it now. Buoyed by their own fervor, they continued, "You're just a parasite living off Mom. As the eldest son, I will take over the management of the company. Pack your bags and get out of here. I can't believe you, living at home at your age, depending on your parents. Live a more independent life." His wife then threw water in my face from a glass and laughed loudly. I couldn't take it anymore. There was no reason for me to be insulted so unreasonably. I wouldn't let this go. I vowed to cut ties with these two and retaliate against them by any means necessary. "Fine. I'll leave this house." When I declared my decision to leave, they were unnaturally pleased. Now Dad's company and the house will be mine. Plus, if we live with Mom, we can manage her pension. That's right, Philip. What a great idea. We'll be rich, and if you're the president, I'll be the president's wife. Doesn't that sound wonderful? They were gleefully discussing their future. To maximize their discomfort, I decided to keep the fact that I would be taking over the company hidden until after the funeral. Revealing it now would ruin everything. Pretending to be upset, I packed my bags and left the house as they had demanded. During the funeral, Philip pompously told my father's employees, "From now on, as the eldest son, I will be taking over the company. Please support me." Even as everyone was mourning my father's passing, Philip continued with such remarks, completely ignoring the mood of the gathering. "He's hopeless." My mother sighed, dismayed. Only my foolish brother and his wife remained unaware of the entire truth. Even after the funeral ended smoothly, the busy days continued with various administrative tasks. During this time, I noticed over 100 missed calls and messages left on my answering machine from my brother. I decided to answer the next call. "Hey, what the hell did you do? When I went to Dad's company, they told me the next president is his daughter. I haven't heard anything about this. I am the president. I've even quit my job at the other company." My brother ranted in anger, his statements disjointed, showing he didn't understand the situation he was in. He had excitedly gone to the company to introduce himself as the new president, only to be coldly received and pitied by all employees. How could Dad leave his precious company to someone like you who only thinks about himself? And I heard you and your wife are deep in gambling debts. What? How do you know that? I haven't told anyone. In reality, when I resigned from my previous job, I had mentioned taking over my father's company. When you have a sibling, it's a good idea to do a background check. There's often trouble involving money, my former boss had advised me. At first, I didn't understand what he meant, but just to be safe, I investigated my brother and his wife, and the fact that they were swamped in gambling debts came to light. I had you and your wife investigated. How were you planning to repay those mounting debts? Were you planning to use the money Dad left behind? Was that why you wanted to kick me out and move back home? It's shockingly short-sighted. Why? How could this? It turned out that the debts, including those of his wife, had piled up to the point of no return. But I would never allow them to count on Dad's estate. Anyway, it's already decided that I will take over Dad's company. That was his last wish. The lawyer will soon confirm the will, but I don't think there will be a single penny left for you guys. What? That's a lie. Through the phone, I could sense my brother's panic, and I silently celebrated in my heart. Then the call was passed to my sister-in-law, who lashed out at me in anger. Listen here. Your brother is suffering, so as his sister, you should help him. To feel nothing, you have no heart. You're the worst. I could have retorted in kind, but it would have been a waste of time, so I chose to ignore her. Please pay back the debts you created yourselves. It's irrelevant to me and my mother, so please don't contact us again. Your remaining options are to work hard and pay off the debt or declare bankruptcy. Good luck. Goodbye. Wait a minute. Listen to me until the end. I could hear her screaming from the handset, but I hung up the phone. They would now be chased by debt repayment and likely live in poverty for the rest of their lives. It was a fitting consequence for relying on my father's money and not valuing family. If they suffered even a bit as a couple, it would serve them right. Subsequent messages were left on my answering machine a few times. Currently, my brother and his wife have started working at a new factory, but their marital strife continues daily, and it seems a divorce is imminent. I do not want them to interfere in any way as I work to grow the company, so I intend to completely cut ties with them. Thus, my plan for revenge was successfully completed with a sense of refreshing closure.
This is going to be our home now. The rest of the stuff is arriving today, so please take care of them. What? Why are you deciding this on your own? Oh, by the way, Anna will be coming too. Please welcome her. I had noticed that they had started coming over more often since we moved into the high-rise condo, but I never expected such bold actions. I immediately asked my husband, who had just returned from work. Your mother and her family are saying they're going to live here? Oh, yeah, that was today, wasn't it? What are you talking about? Huh? Didn't I mention it? They're moving in with us today. Haha. I was dumbfounded by my husband's laughter. I couldn't think of what to say next. Don't just stand there. Get ready to make dinner. We're celebrating today. At those words, my anger reached its peak. How can this be allowed? After all, we can live here thanks to me. Huh? What are you talking about? That's not true. As we were arguing, my mother-in-law arrived. If you hate living together so much, why don't you just leave? Then she threw an envelope on the table. What is this? It's severance money from us. Severance money? There's $10,000 in the envelope. Take it, get divorced, and leave. We'll take the house. The in-laws were snickering at me. At that moment, I made up my mind. They are such fools. Lucky me. Understood. I'll leave right away. I quickly packed my bags and left the house, jumping for joy. But this wasn't the end. I couldn't stop laughing, thinking about what would happen to my in-laws next. My name is Sarah, and I work as a bank employee. I thought I would have a happy life married to Kevin. But marriage doesn't always go as planned. I realized this when I first met my mother-in-law. So you are Sarah. What do you do for a living? I'm a bank employee. Oh, a bank employee, huh? I guess you don't have to be too smart to do that. What? It was clear she was belittling me. This happened during our introductory meeting before the marriage. Kevin, sitting next to me, seemed not to hear and just smoked his cigarette. Well, let's get along from now on. Yes. Nice to meet you. I wondered if everything was going to be okay, But after we got married, my husband was kind and we didn't have to interact much with my mother-in-law. Are you sure it was a good idea to marry a man with such a modest salary? What's wrong all of a sudden? Well, my mom used to say such things, but now I just feel pathetic. It's okay. Don't worry. Kevin had always been insecure, even when we were dating. He was even intimidated when he found out I was a bank employee, but I never cared much about my partner's financial status. Since then, I think we've had a fun, albeit modest, life. What are you planning to do about where we live? A few months after getting married, I received a phone call from my father. I think we're fine as we are now. We don't have any particular needs. Actually, a spot has opened up in the high-rise condo, so I was wondering what you think. Huh? A high-rise condo. Indeed, my father owned a high-rise condo. Originally a company president, he had handed over the business to my brother and was now living a relaxed life. Of course, my husband was aware of this. If you guys are interested, you can move in immediately. Got it. I'll discuss it with Kevin. I consulted with my husband. Kevin, are you interested in living in a high-rise condo? A high-rise condo? It would be amazing to live in such a place. Kevin showed an excitement I hadn't seen before. Seeing his smile made me happy too. Actually, my dad offered us to live in the high-rise condo. Really? Yes. Kevin, possibly overwhelmed with excitement, suddenly grabbed my shoulders. Calm down a bit. Sorry. And so, it was decided that we would live in the high-rise condo. However, for me, it was the beginning of a nightmare. I'll contact Dad then. Okay, thanks. But I can't believe I'm going to live in a high-rise condo. Kevin's eyes sparkled. After getting Kevin's approval, I called my dad the next day. Hello, Dad? Kevin agreed, so we've decided to move in. That's great. It's already cleaned and ready for you anytime. Got it. Thank you. Don't worry, I'll take care of the paperwork. At this moment, I realized something important and asked my father. By the way, how will we handle the rent? Don't worry about that. As long as you live there, you won't need to pay rent. Really? Of course. It's all for my dear daughter. My husband and I started preparing to move immediately. We moved in just 1 week. Perhaps both of us were excited to live in the high-rise condo. So this is a high-rise condo. It's incredible. I never imagined we could live in such a place. It's like a dream. All thanks to your father. Indeed, we need to express our gratitude. Although initially bewildered by the larger space of the high-rise condo, it only took a week for us to get used to it. I had concerns about whether someone like me should live there, but those concerns faded away. About 2 months after we started living in the high-rise condo, my sister Anna wants to come visit. Is that okay? Kevin had an older sister named Anna. I heard from Kevin that she had been married but got divorced because she was fed up with her husband and had returned to her parents' home. That's fine, but why does she want to come here? I hardly had any conversation with her before, so I didn't understand the reason. Well, I mentioned our new place, and she said she wanted to come over. That's fine, as long as it's on the weekend. I'll let her know then. And then the promised Saturday arrived. When the doorbell rang and I opened the front door, there stood a woman clad in branded items from head to toe. I couldn't help but step back, and then she spoke. It's been a while. Do you remember me? Of course, Anna. Then may I come in? Oh, excuse me. Please come in. My sister-in-law entered the house and seemed to be inspecting every corner. She checked each room, nodding as if satisfied with something. Is there something that concerns you? I was just admiring the house. Ordinary people can't live in such a place, right? It's all thanks to my father. Then we moved to the living room and had a casual chat. During our pleasant conversation, my sister-in-law suddenly made a condescending remark. At that time, I didn't understand why that was happening. It must be nice to be you, Sarah. Don't you think so, Kevin? I don't really. But this house is all thanks to your father-in-law, right? I wondered why she said that and timidly asked for a reason. Did I do something wrong? Not at all. It's just that our family wasn't wealthy. I knew from Kevin that his father had passed away when they were in middle school. Since then, they have faced many hardships. That made me think she might be jealous of me. That could be why she was dressed in all those branded items. Well, I'll be going now. I'll visit again soon. Take care. Okay. For about 2 hours, the conversation mostly revolved around their hardships and how fortunate I was. During that time, Kevin hardly joined in the conversation and just silently listened to his sister. I'm sorry. My sister is like that. I kind of figured. I'll make sure to warn her next time. Kevin promised, but less than a month later, she visited us again. And this time, she wasn't alone. Sorry for intruding. She barged in and plopped down on the sofa. Today, I brought our mom along, but the door was locked. Oh, Kevin gave me a spare key. What? I wanted to ask Kevin about it immediately, but he was out and unavailable. I had a bad feeling this could lead to trouble. And then the most troublesome person spoke up. It's not that big of a deal. What's the problem with having a spare key? The issue is that I wasn't informed about it. Maybe Kevin doesn't trust you? I think so too. With the two of them against me, it seemed hopeless. From that day on, my life turned completely different from before. When I returned home from work, I found my sister-in-law and my mother-in-law in the house. Moreover, they had helped themselves to the food in the fridge and moved things around the rooms without asking. This isn't right, don't you think? Even if I say something, the two of them won't listen. So, maybe it's best to just let them do what they want. I can't stand living like this. Please talk to them. I was quite frustrated. Frustrated with my husband for doing nothing and with myself for being powerless. Okay, I'll talk to them. Will you be there with me? If you're going to speak up properly, then I don't mind. My husband, as usual, confronted the two when they came over. However, they didn't pay any attention. Sarah must have instigated this, right? Come on, Kevin, be more assertive. That's right. You're the head of the household. You should have your own opinions. Then my husband seemed to be contemplating something, looking down. Don't say weird things. Please leave. When I said this to the two, my husband unexpectedly turned against me. You're the one who should be quiet. What? My husband was siding against me. He had completely succumbed to the will of his mother and sister. They took advantage of Kevin's lack of confidence and his inability to refuse. Now, I had no one on my side. I was wrong in my judgment. What my sister and mother said is correct. From now on, I will also express my own opinions. When my husband spoke with newfound confidence, the two smirked and looked at us. From then on, the situation became one-sided. I've decided to allow my mom and sister to come and go as they please. Wait, don't make such decisions without me. The decision is made and you have no say in it. My husband ignored my opinion, and his mother and sister supported his decision. Sarah, that's enough. That's right. Kevin is the head of this household. You just need to follow him as his wife. And there's a spare room, right? No way. It's a waste to have an unused room, so we'll use it. The atmosphere was clearly in their favor. The room lent by my father was now considered theirs. Given the circumstances, I had no choice but to tough it out. I decided to focus on my work and not worry about the situation at home. 6 months later, this attitude paid off. You've been doing really well lately. How about working in a higher position? Me, I've been watching your work recently, and I think you're the right person for the job. Thank you. I'll continue to do my best. It was an unexpected motivation, but it was the happiest thing that had happened to me so far. However, there was a problem. You've been coming home late recently. What have you been up to? Just work. Really? Aren't you having an affair? If you think it's a lie, go ahead and check. This is where my mother-in-law and sister-in-law would chime in. Getting so defensive makes you look even more suspicious. Anna might be right, but Mom, no one would pay attention to Sarah with her looks. Indeed, they clapped their hands and laughed together. They were just having fun teasing me. Until then, they would come over maybe 3 times a week at most, but recently, they started to be at our house almost every day. One day, my mother-in-law came to me and said something totally off base. Do you need something? Do you even understand? Understand what? Have you ever thought about why you can live in a place like this? A woman like you doesn't fit in here. I thought to myself, that's more like her. You can't even do household chores properly. You're useless here. Do you get that? I was continuously bombarded with such baseless accusations. Of course, I wanted to retort immediately, but I felt that nothing I said would improve the situation. I chose to stay silent. Afterwards, perhaps bored, my mother-in-law returned to her room. Just as I was about to start preparing dinner, my sister-in-law came. I heard the conversation earlier. There's never a moment of peace. You should really understand your place. You're like a maid in this house. I work hard too, you know? And it might sound bad, but I earn more than Kevin. Then you should contribute that money to the household expenses. For us, of course. I couldn't agree with her argument. I wasn't living in luxury. I was actually paying for most of our daily expenses, like utilities and groceries. Kevin seemed to have forgotten that, and more importantly, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law didn't even know the reality. I often wondered what would happen if I stopped paying. Then why don't you work, Anna? Why should I have to do that? I almost envied her ability to say such things earnestly. It was a mystery where she went every day without working. So, where do you go every day? I don't need to tell you that. At that moment, my sister-in-law avoided looking at me. It was clear she was involved in something she couldn't openly talk about. Is that so? Then I'll just assume you're gallivanting around every day without working. I said this with a serious face. Angered, my sister-in-law threw a mug from the table at me. It didn't hit me, but the mug shattered into pieces. Why did you dodge? That was my favorite cup. Since it's your fault, clean it up. I silently began cleaning up the broken cup while she stood by, watching and laughing. I thought about throwing the shards back at her, but I refrained. You're in the way standing there. What? I'm just watching. After cleaning up in a few minutes, I tried to leave, but my sister-in-law interjected again. Remember, if you say something weird next time, it'll be much worse. I understand. I'll be careful. Inside, I didn't mean it. Watching my sister-in-law's satisfied departure, I complained in my mind. Don't get too cocky. You'll get what's coming to you soon. Then one day, as usual, when I returned home from shopping, the house was noisy. Entering the house, I was met with a multitude of cardboard boxes everywhere. My mother-in-law was bustling around. What are you doing? This is going to be our home now. The rest of the stuff is arriving today, so please take care of them. What? Why are you deciding this on your own? Oh, by the way, Anna will be coming too. Please welcome her. I immediately asked my husband, who had just returned from work. Your mother and her family are saying they're going to live here? Oh, yeah, that was today, wasn't it? What are you talking about? Huh? Didn't I mention it? They're moving in with us today. I was dumbfounded by my husband's laughter. I couldn't think of what to say next. Don't just stand there. Get ready to make dinner. We're celebrating today. At those words, my anger reached its peak. How can this be allowed? After all, we can live here thanks to me. Huh? What are you talking about? That's not true. Are you serious? Serious? But you're just obeying everything your family says. What did you say? Say that again. My husband raised his hand towards me. At that moment, it wasn't fear I felt, but disbelief at how my husband, who used to be so unassertive, could change to this extent. Going to hit me? Try if you dare. Then, my husband slowly lowered his arm. Apparently, my words intimidated him, and he calmed down a bit. But then, he started laughing, recalling something. What are you laughing at? I just remembered why we got married. You should be thankful that you could marry me. What are you talking about? You might not know, but I married you because nobody else was interested. Before, I thought we got married out of love. Now, being told this, there's nothing I can do. My husband continued with a shocking revelation. And it's annoying, but I married you because you earn more than me. Oh, but that's what Mom told me. I felt nothing but anger towards my laughing husband. So that was the reason. Since you're married to someone like me, it's only natural for you to contribute to the living expenses. Indeed, Ever since we got married, I was the one who always provided the money whenever needed. I never thought you were such a terrible person. That's mutual. You only bring home money, and I never thought you could be so boring. As my husband and I were arguing, my mother-in-law arrived. If you hate living together so much, why don't you just leave? Why should I have to do that? We don't need someone like you in this place. My sister-in-law agreed. Sarah is unnecessary. Nothing will change if you're gone. Then, my mother-in-law threw an envelope on the table. What is this? It's severance money from us. Severance money? There's $10,000 in the envelope. Take it, get divorced, and leave. We'll take the house. Haha. My in-laws were smirking at me. At that moment, I made up my mind. The high-rise condo I was living in was technically in my name, but I was only borrowing it for free from my father. And then, I thought of a way to retaliate against them. Such foolish people. This is an opportunity for me. I decided to act immediately. Understood. I'll leave right away. I thought you would put up more of a fight. Well, that's the kind of woman she was. Too bad, but I don't want to see your face anymore, so leave quickly. I was planning to do so without you telling me. I quickly packed my bags and left the house, almost dancing with glee. Imagining what would happen to my in-laws next made me unable to stop laughing. I decided to go back to my parents' house to inform my father about the situation. Why have you come back suddenly? I've been kicked out of the house. Kicked out? How did that happen? Well, you see, I explained to my father what had happened that day and the events leading up to it. I could see my father's face turning to anger as I spoke. After I finished, he was angrier than I had ever seen him. Let's kick them out immediately. But I stopped him. Wait, Dad, I have a better idea. What kind of idea? I shared the plan I had thought of when leaving the house. My father nodded and accepted my suggestion. That's a brilliant idea, right? This way, it benefits you as well, and I get my revenge. So, you'll take care of it? Yes, don't worry. The next day, I contacted my husband immediately. About the apartment, I have no intention of giving it back. I know, but the ownership is still mine, so I'm thinking of transferring it to you. Then it will truly be yours, right? I see. I don't want to cause you any trouble. I'll handle the paperwork. Is that okay? Okay. I'll leave it to you. All right. I'll also send the divorce papers by mail. Take care. After saying that, I hung up the phone. Just before hanging up, I could sense my husband's joy. A week later, the divorce was finalized, and the paperwork for the high-rise condo was completed. All that was left was to wait. Hey, I got a bill for $6,000. What's the meaning of this? Explain. A month later, my furious husband called. It was hard to suppress my laughter at his reaction. Well, it's a high-rise condo, you know? Did you think you could live there for free? But the rent was free until now, wasn't it? Indeed, when I was there. Haha. This is no joke. He was shouting so loudly that I had to pull the phone away from my ear. It was free because I was there, but now that it's yours, you need to pay the rent. We're not going to pay that. You can choose not to, but remember, the owner of the apartment is my father. After a moment of silence, my mother-in-law took the phone. I heard from Kevin what you did. That was unnecessary of you. Unnecessary? I believe what I did was entirely justified. Please don't be mistaken. What an impudent woman you are. It doesn't matter to me. Haha. You shouldn't have given me $10,000 then. I provoked my mother-in-law. I thought I wouldn't have to deal with them anymore. Indeed, my words got to her. We will absolutely not pay. Is that so? That's fine by me. But don't say I didn't warn you if my father decides to sue. My mother-in-law seemed shaken, losing her previous confidence. Aren't you ashamed to rely on your father? Not at all. It's more shameful for someone who tried to manipulate their son to their own ends, don't you think? I can have a reasonable conversation with you, so let's send this. She must have realized she was at a disadvantage because she abruptly hung up the phone. She was just running away. I immediately informed my father about the conversation. I see. Then I need to do something about it for my daughter. I'm counting on you. My former in-laws acted impulsively, thinking only of their convenience, and this was the result. Such a pitiful parent and child. They will face more difficulties from now on. I will just wait and enjoy watching. Time passed, and my ex-husband and his family continued living in the high-rise condo without paying rent. Eventually, my father had to take action. I just billed them for the past due rent. Really? We can't ignore this any longer. It will be a good lesson for them. Then, a new revelation came to light. There were traces of unauthorized purchases made with a credit card in my name. A lawyer, introduced by my father, was hired, and preparations for a lawsuit began, demanding reimbursement from my ex-husband and his family. Why should we pay you? The first to object was my sister-in-law, mostly because the purchases were expensive branded bags and clothes. How can you say that after shopping with someone else's money? This is clear theft. It's pathetic to fuss over such trivial matters. Besides, those purchases were made before your divorce, so I think they're invalid. Unfortunately, that logic doesn't apply. You and I are strangers now. I don't care about that. The call was from my sister-in-law, but she hung up unilaterally. Escaping seems to be their usual tactic. However, they couldn't escape and had to make the payment. They must pay the rent for the apartment, but that family doesn't have the means to pay. There was one person who came begging for forgiveness. What are you saying now? We can't afford to pay such an amount. We'd be ruined even if we took out loans. You understand, right? My mother-in-law was trying to get sympathy through tears. It's all your responsibility. Aren't you ashamed at this point? I know that. I'm asking you, having known about it fully well. I felt it was a waste of time to be involved with these people. It's impossible. Please make sure to pay the full amount. Please help me. Afterward, it seems they continued to live in poverty. The three of them, having lost their place to live, returned to their old family home, which was in a dilapidated state to neglect. Eventually, they realized they needed more money to live and decided to sell it for a cheap price. I heard, "Sarah, please help me." I received a call from my ex-husband, Kevin, but I ignored it and hung up. In the end, I was able to live in the high-rise condo they had left. Of course, I don't have to pay any rent. My work is going well, and from now on, I will live my life putting my happiness first.